to talk about this idea of what games should be. See, because I have the self-awareness to realize that I spend more time criticizing games and the industry than I do celebrating it. And that's not because I don't love games. I love games. It's what I talk about more than anything else. It's because the industry, by and large, does not live up to my expectations. They're not doing what I know they're capable of, what you know they're capable of, but everybody knows they're capable of. See, because I think all of us, regardless of age or experience, are holding on to the idea of a dream game, quietly hoping every next release is going to be that game, and it rarely ever happens. And that's not because there's a lack of talent in the industry. It's not because there's a lack of resources, imagination, and we sure as hell know that it's not for a lack of money. It's because there are too many studios that are out there that are focused on the outcomes rather than the experience. And if you're only thinking about what your work can lead to rather than the work itself, how are you going to make a good video game? Recently, I played Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2 back to back. And without exaggerating, this is one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had. I recommend it to everybody. This, for RPG fans, is one of those rare moments of an evolution within a genre that we just do not see reflected anywhere else in the industry. It's the dream game that many of us have been hoping for. And it's a game that the rest of the industry refuses to make. Not because it's too risky, but because it's too real. This isn't a wake-up call. We're past that. No. This is simply what games should be. So today what I want to do is I want to walk you guys through an experience and share with you what makes a game special, but more than anything, I want to talk about what we've lost. But you know what you should lose? That chair with today's sponsor. This is the worst transition I've ever done. A bad chair can make hours at a desk unbearable. Poor posture, back pain, and general discomfort will all add up over time. Whether it's for work, gaming, or editing, a sturdy and ergonomic chair makes all the difference. That's where the FlexiSpot C7 Max comes in, a premium adjustable chair designed for long-term comfort and support. The entire backrest height can be adjusted to fit different body types, and the adaptive lumbar support ensures the perfect level of lower back comfort. Unlike standard chairs with a basic foam, the C7 Max features a latex seat cushion with memory foam, offering soft yet firm support for all-day sitting, up to 12 hours comfortably. The headrest tilts to the ideal angle for working, reading, or relaxing, while the 5D armrest adjusts for better support while typing or gaming. For even more customization, the seat depth can be adjusted, and the backrest reclines up to 135 degrees for a more relaxed position. For those who like to kick back, well, there's even a footrest option, perfect for watching a show or taking a break. Right now, there's a $50 discount using the code C750 at flexispot.com or using the link in the description. If you're on a budget, you can pick up the 2023 C7 ergonomic chair that's available now with a $200 discount using the code C7YTB200. Upgrade your setup today and experience true comfort. Again, go to flexispot.com or check the link in the description below. Thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. Just a heads up, this video does contain spoilers for KCD 1 and KCD 2. I think it's important to recognize that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 isn't the product of some multi-billion-dollar publisher or a studio with thousands of developers spread across multiple continents. It was made by Warhorse Studio, a mid-sized team based in Czech Republic. They're not working with the same kind of budgets that Ubisoft or EA throw around. They made the game for a measly $36 million. They don't have the marketing machine of CD Projekt Red or the global reach of Rockstar, and yet they delivered a game that doesn't just compete with the biggest RPGs in the market, it flat out outclasses them in areas that matter the most. Depth, immersion, consistency, and above all, heart. There's no cynical monetization model here, no content bloat to inflate playtime, no focused, tested design to make sure it appeals to everyone. Warhorse committed to a vision, something historical, grounded, brutally unforgiving, and full of life. It's not that they just made a great RPG, it's that they made this RPG. Under the constraints that would break most teams, limited budget, a small dev team, a niche historical setting with no fantasy flair, a refusal to compromise their design for mass appeal, and they still managed to push the genre forward in a way that many AAA studios haven't dared to in years. I don't think that I'm alone when I say that most modern RPGs don't live up to the experience that we're looking for. The mechanics that we associate with the genre, experience points, leveling, passive perks, character building, loot, classes, they've all become fluff rather than the foundational systems that are necessary for these games to give us what we want. They're there, sure, but they rarely mean anything anymore. They're just there to give you the illusion of progress more than anything else. Recently, I criticized Assassin's Creed Shadows for exactly this. It's the perfect example. The loot, the skill trees, the levels, they don't change how you experience the game. The enemies might have a bigger number next to their name. Your character might get fancier gear, but nothing actually feels different. You play the game the same way that you would at hour 1, that you would at hour 60. It's all smoke and mirrors. Let's be honest, most RPGs today are just thinly veiled power fantasies more than anything else. You're the destined hero with a prophecy stapled to your forehead. The world bends to you, not because you earned it, but because the script says so. There's no real arc to your character's growth, no tangible evolution in how your character interacts with the world. You're powerful because the game says you are. Kingdom Come Deliverance doesn't just understand what an RPG is supposed to be, it commits to it. It captures the soul of the genre both narratively and mechanically. You are Henry, son of a blacksmith, no combat training outside of the occasional tavern scrap, no knowledge of the world outside of your village, no real skills outside of the chores that you did at home. Your life was simple, and then it wasn't. You were thrust into life-altering events, and you have nothing to your name. No money, no power, no direction, and everything you do from that point on, you earn. Most RPGs put you on rails. Even the ones that market themselves as open world games are afraid to let go of your hand. They scale enemy levels. They lock off progression areas because you're not ready for it yet. They do everything they can to make sure that you have a smooth and painless ride because they don't respect their audience. They don't trust their audience. They think players want to feel like a hero right out of the gate. Kingdom Come does not give a damn about that. The entire world is out of your league. You're not the chosen one. You're not special. You're a nobody, and the game treats you like one. At the start, you can't just grab a sword and run off killing bandits. You can't just stroll into towns, loot houses, murder NPCs, and cheese your way through systems. I mean, you can at some point, but you still have to earn the right to be able to do those things. You're going to barely survive running away from a pack of wolves. You're going to get killed by a lone bandit on the road. You're going to steal food because you're starving. You'll sneak into a barn and sleep on some hay just to be able to survive the night. And then you're probably going to get arrested for doing all those things, which is only going to make things worse. But through those failures, those very human, messy, and frustrating failures, you'll grow. Kingdom Come adopts the Bethesda-esque learning by doing system. Every step you take, every lock you pick, every sword you swing, every injury you take, it all is building your skills. But it goes deeper than that because of how brutal 15th century Bohemia is and how green Henry is as a character. You are going to grow alongside him. The learning here isn't abstract, it's personal. When you're brewing potions, you're not just pressing a button and watching a bar fill. You're not instantly crafting items off of a crafting table or vendor. You're pouring the water, you're grinding the herbs, you're boiling the ingredients, timing everything to make sure you don't ruin the batch. You're collecting fresh herbs to make sure because quality matters. You're not just crafting for a bonus, you're crafting to survive. Combat is totally unforgiving. You need to memorize combos, time parries, blocks, and dodges perfectly. You have to think about the strengths and weaknesses of the weapon type that you're using versus the enemy that's in front of you. You have to think about where you're the most protected and where the enemy is the least protected. If their wrists are exposed, go for those. If they're wearing a helmet or they're not wearing a helmet, then go for the eyes. I still remember the first time sword fighting clicked. I wasn't flailing, I wasn't panicking, I was in control. I was reading my opponent, managing my stamina, landing counters, not perfectly, but confidently to say the least. And it wasn't because my stats had gone up, it was because I had grown as a player. Hours of sparring with sword masters, trial and error, and losing duels, licking my wounds, it all led to this one sword fight where I finally felt like a swordsman. That's what an RPG is supposed to feel like. And that same philosophy extends to every part of the game. Passive skills aren't just flashy finishers and game-breaking perks. They're subtle enhancements that require you to capitalize on them. Sure, you can unlock a trait that gives you an attack bonus when you're outnumbered, but you still have to parry, dodge, and swing with precision. An alchemy perk might give you slightly better yields, but you still have to physically craft those potions. This is not a numbers go up system. It's a player get better system. And it's phenomenal. I love that everything I do matters. I love that every action ripples throughout the entire game, not just through dialogue choices or morality sliders, but through tiny, persistent systems that all interlock beautifully together. At one point, I was investigating a murder. I needed to infiltrate a suspect's home. I had convinced the guard I was a healer. Now, how did I do that? Well, it's because I recited scripts from a medical text that I had read 15 hours earlier in my playthrough, a book that I had stolen on a completely unrelated quest, and I only found that book because I had the lockpicking skills to open that chest and the stealth to avoid any detection. That moment wasn't scripted, it was earned. organically, accidentally, and beautifully earned. Kingdom Come is abrasive. It doesn't care about coddling you because it wants to leave a mark. It wants to scar you. Every victory feels like the result of real effort. You begin your journey barely even able to find food or survive a wolf attack, and you end it by dueling master swordsmen, winning tournaments, going to war, and earning the respect of nobles. But no matter how many skill points you unlock, no matter what loot you carry, the real reward is what you've learned, what you've earned. You are what changes, not just the character sheet. It's that struggle that grounds you. It ties your sense of progression not to just numbers on a screen, but to a journey. It's one full of mistakes, setbacks, and tiny victories. That sense of immersion that doesn't come from beautiful graphics or formulaic design. It comes from knowing that you had to live through it to get where you are. Not many games can dial you in like this. Everything you do is with intent and purpose, and then it cascades throughout the entire game. Experience isn't just a number, it's a journey. And I realize not every single game needs to be like this. They can't be like this. If they were, then, well, gaming would be exhausting more than anything else. But the vast majority of the industry wouldn't even try to do any of these things. It would never deign upon them to try to do any of these things because they're so afraid they would limit the size of their audience. So they take something that should be an immersive experience and they streamline it to suit a modern audience, a broader audience. That sucks. Simple as that. That sucks. I have limited time and limited money, and I want games that I'll remember. I want games that are going to leave a mark on me. I want games that I'm going to want to come back to. But this industry is so obsessed with throwaway experiences, consumable games, hundreds of hours of nothing you'll ever remember. I hate it. You know, I hated Kingdom Come Deliverance when I first started playing it. I hated being weak. I hated struggling. I hated getting caught trying to steal when I was trying to make my way up the ladder, trying to get some better gear or something like that. Just a couple groschen here or there. And ultimately selling the things that I stole in the same city that I stole them in, which is probably not the best idea for me to do. I didn't realize the game was that reactive, that they would know that, yeah, hey, we know whose shit that is. But I almost quit. The game almost filtered me, but the longer I stuck with it, the more I realized what it was trying to do. It was trying to set me on a journey. And the minute that I realized that, the minute that I realized this is exactly what I was hoping games could become. It brought back that old feeling of what games could be or what they should be. And what's wild is that same sense of slow earned progression throughout the entire game is then reflected directly onto the game's world, its characters, and its narrative. They didn't just make the mechanics, realize they nailed it, and phone the rest home like we've seen more times than I can count at this point. No, they made sure that that philosophy was in the entire game from start to finish. And it's beautiful. And you know what's even more beautiful? This game doesn't include the one thing that I hate the most. Modern writing. One of the most common criticisms that I've had for modern games is how restricted and artificial the writing feels. It's just not real. The dialogue feels like it's been filtered through social media or HR, like they're trying to tie their game to a trend rather than build a believable world. And when their writers do try to tackle bigger themes, they usually inject modern social commentary into places where it just doesn't belong. Take Dragon Age the Veilguard as an example. That game felt like a socially awkward millennial isekai titled, I'm a loser in another world surrounded by other losers and a whiny lizard person. The dialogue constantly leaned on modern slang and surface level social issues in a setting that already had rich established lore. It felt completely fake. It didn't matter what world I was supposed to be in because every conversation just yanked me right back to my own. Talent, tone, nuance, social awareness, these things are dying in modern game narratives today. Characters don't feel real anymore because the people that are writing them don't know how to connect with real people. Years of living in online echo chambers have warped how some of these writers think people actually talk to one another, and it shows. Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2 have some of the strongest writing that I've ever experienced in any RPG, right up there with Baldur's Gate 3, and honestly, in some ways, it's even stronger. What makes it stand out isn't the historical accuracy or the period-specific dialogue, it's the fact that the game just feels completely unafraid to be itself. There's no pressure to modernize the language or insert modern ideologies. It's raw, grounded, and entirely unfiltered. Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2 feel like they're from another era, not just in setting, but in spirit. And that's the biggest revelation I had when I was playing these games is that, most modern writing and language just doesn't feel honest. And in games, language is everything, and I think a lot of writers have lost sight of that. It's how we understand characters. It's what makes a world feel alive instead of generic. Get the language wrong, and the whole thing falls apart. From my perspective, language is the bridge between the player and the world. It's how we're invited in or how we're kept at arm's length. When it's done right, it draws you in closer, makes you believe in the characters that you're talking to, makes you feel like you're a part of their world. But when it's clumsy or out of place or hollow, it just becomes a barrier. Suddenly, you're no longer talking to a tavern owner in 15th century Bohemia. You're listening to a modern day writer tell you what to think. It breaks the illusion. The spell is gone. Great writing doesn't just come from conveying information. It sets the tone, builds the culture, defines relationships, and it gives a voice to people who don't even have a backstory, and it makes them feel real. When Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 opens up, Henry and Hans are galloping through the countryside, cracking jokes, taking jabs at one another, excited to be striking out on their own. It's the kind of scene that just works, not because it's flashy or dramatic, but because it feels like it's two people who actually know each other. The inside jokes, the camaraderie, it's all there. It feels familiar, not because of the journey that you shared, but because you could easily see this reflected in the friendships you personally have. You don't get that kind of authenticity when your idea of relatable is just tossing out the occasional shit or damn for shock value. See, kids, we use curse words, just like in real life. I stepped into a sparring match with Sir Hans without equipping a sword, and he said, "What do you think we're gonna do, fight with our cocks?" I was dying when I heard that. It sounded exactly like some goofy quip that I would hear at the bar with my friends, and it stuck with me. Later on, I went on a quest to hunt a serial killer. Catherine delivers one of the best pieces of voice acting and motion capture I've ever seen in a video game.
I have to talk to him about our wedding. I won't be left alone with his child.
What are you screeching about, you ninny? There's no Hendel here. Certainly not for the likes of you.
Do you hear that, folks? He fucks me from all sides. Gets me with child, and now he doesn't want to know me.
Get rid of her. Disgrace.
You're too old for him. Nobody will believe your lies.
Old am I? He came to me himself because he wanted a mature woman to breed with. And he never even pulled it out. And he filled me up like a wineskin.
This kind of dialogue, this mix of grit, wit, and personality, it's all but gone in modern games. It's too honest, too real, too human more than anything else. And it makes you realize just how rare it is to see people in games talking like people again, not some corporate approved safe version of people, not some sanitized, inoffensive version, just real, flawed, grounded characters saying things that make sense for them in their world. That honesty goes beyond the dialogue, by the way. It lives in the characters themselves. NPCs speak broken English. Foreign characters mix in German, French, and other languages into their speech. It adds this extra layer of immersion that most games wouldn't even try to deliver. When I talk to Menhard as an example, I feel like I'm actually talking to a German. The more I speak with him, the more I understand his speech patterns, and I don't need subtitles or exposition dumps. I just learn through talking, and that's what makes Kingdom Come Deliverance so special, because you just want to keep talking to people. I spent hours wandering around chatting with villagers, merchants, and random NPCs because they all just felt so human. They weren't just quest givers or lore dispensers. They were people with lives, stories, and personalities, and that's what a good RPG should aim for. When conversations are written this well, you don't need forced morality systems or a flashy dialogue wheel. You just talk, listen, and, well, you start to care. While doing a quest for the miller, I needed to go out and get my hands on some saltpeter, and he told me to go and trick the gravedigger into giving me access to the mass grave. Seems simple enough, but when I actually went and spoke to the gravedigger, heard his story, asked why he did what he did, learned about his job and his life, he wasn't just some generic NPC. He was just a decent old guy trying to do his part, trying to do right by the dead. I didn't have it in me to lie to the guy, so I just told him the truth, and he agreed to help me anyway. It's wild that I even had this kind of reaction during a side quest, but that's the level of care that Warhorse puts into their writing. You can spend just as much time talking to a grieving widow or a random guy on the road as you could fighting in a tournament. Every interaction matters. Every side quest feels like it has the same care and weight as a main quest. You're never just going to do a task, you're living someone else's moment. I remember one night I was wandering around Kuttenberg and a drunk NPC hailed me over. I figured it was just some throwaway line or maybe a side quest, but no, he just wanted to tell me about the birth of his first child. That was it. He was happy. We had a full conversation about fatherhood, about life, no reward, no XP, just a man celebrating something beautiful. It's moments like this that bring a game to life. It ties everything together. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and honestly, even the first game, are stunningly beautiful games. The fidelity is incredible. The performance is solid. The combat is deep and rewarding. The progression systems, all of it all works together. It's some of the best I've ever seen, but Without a world that feels real, those systems are just part of a machine. It becomes the difference between playing a game and experiencing one. There are too many games today that are using what I like to refer to as hello fellow kids language, and it's just falling flat with audiences. It's just not working. There's too many characters that are now being known for being cringe than there are characters that are known for being cool. And that tells you the direction of games over the last few years. When talking to a character, I don't want to experience a character and how you think people should talk. I want to experience how people actually talk. And I think with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it's based on real events and real people. And in that, they want to make sure that that humanity is reflected in those characters and they pull it off. But a lot of these companies are afraid to do anything like that because, well, it could be problematic. So they soft lock their language. You sacrifice a lot by doing that. I was thinking about it, and when I first started this channel, my language, my tone was very soft. I qualified everything I ever said to make sure nobody misunderstood me, and I wasn't offending anybody. And I realized just how inauthentic that was. It wasn't me. And the minute that I stopped doing it, and the minute that I just started being myself when I was making these videos, was the minute that my viewership skyrocketed more than anything else, because that's what people are looking for today more than anything. Simple as that. And I think we're getting away from that. It is 100% the product of social media, because there's too many people that are saying what they think people want to hear rather than what they actually think. And that works all fine and good for a post on Twitter. Doesn't work very well for a video game that you're supposed to sell, because it's kind of like a tag on a new shirt. You're constantly feeling it. It's there, so you cut it out. But the difference is with a game that you need to engage with for hours and that you spent money on, well, you can't cut that out. You know, I think the biggest casualties of all this tone policing that we've seen isn't just how characters talk, it's how relationships are communicated in games, just character relationships more than anything. How awkward romances are already, like, we see so many people showing off these like awkward romances, villains that you're not allowed to be able to relate to, friendships that don't make any sense, alliances that don't feel earned in any way. But Kingdom Come Deliverance doesn't fall into that trap. They're not worried about being abrasive. If anything, they lean into it as hard as they possibly can, and that's why it works. In the first game, you meet Father Godwin, the parish priest of Auschwitz. You're there investigating a murder, but he can't help. He's bound by the secrecy of confession. Later, you end up running into him at a tavern, and you have the option to share a drink. And as far as I know, you don't have to do this, but if you do, it spirals. You start playing dice, moving on to more drinks, then there's a tavern brawl, you're chasing women, ringing the church bell at midnight, and finally you're walking through fields butt naked with sheep at sunrise. It's hilarious. I haven't laughed this hard at a game in ages, and the best part is that it's completely believable. It doesn't feel like a quest, it feels like a night out with a friend that got wildly out of hand. While I haven't done this exact same thing, I've definitely done similar. This kind of sequence would never make it into most modern games. Too many developers are terrified of the potential backlash over how a scene might depict women or men or just life in general. But the thing is, it's real, it's messy, it's stupid, it's human, and those are the kind of moments that will draw a player deeper into a story and deeper into its characters. It's going to make them feel as though they are creating a genuine bond with that world. Look at the relationship between Henry and Hans Capon. Hans can't stand you when you guys first meet, and you're not exactly a fan of his either, but you guys come from completely different worlds. Neither of you guys really understand one another, and when you're forced to spend time together and through a chain of random events later, well, that animosity slowly turns into friendship. You realize how much you actually have in common. Before long, you're getting into trouble together, sharing laughs, risking your lives, and it's all earned. That's the part a lot of writers miss, that arc, that development. They wouldn't even think to write a relationship like that because, frankly, they've probably never experienced anything like it themselves. But as a customer, I have experienced something like that. One of my closest friends today started out as somebody that I barely got along with. We ran in the same circle, but we never really got to know each other. We never really talked to one another. One night, we both ended up in the middle of a party that turned into a pretty big fight. The cops were called. We bailed together, ducked down an alley, drove off in my car, freaked out, laughing, and just started talking to one another. Found out we both loved Diablo 2, started talking about World of Warcraft. The next thing I know, I'm turning on the radio. We find that we like the same music. Not long after, we're laughing about how wrong our assumptions of each other were. After that, we were the best of friends. And that's why the Henry and Hans friendship resonates so much, because it's grounded, it's real, it's how relationships are actually formed. I think this is exactly what's missing from so many games that want to say something meaningful. Studios with a powerful message, but they don't understand how to reach people. They don't understand how people work. They wrap their stories in lofty ideals and carefully curated virtue, but they forget that people connect through shared experiences, not lectures. Too many game narratives feel like they're written by a high school counselor. It's not immersive, it's invasive. It doesn't feel like a game. It feels like somebody's trying to infiltrate your hobby with a message that they care more about than your experience. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 doesn't do that. Its lessons hit harder because of how grounded everything else is. It's a story about war, about coming of age, about discovering yourself in the world. There was some backlash at launch. Some of it was genuine. A lot of it was manufactured more than anything else. And while I don't blame people for raising concerns, most of that discourse ignored the one thing that actually mattered: execution. Not representation, not politics, just execution. People were worried about things like the Cumans no longer being the bad guys, and Musa and the Gypsies or the Jewish quarter, and what that kind of inclusion meant. And I get it. People are wary, understandably so. They've been burned by studios that have disguised half-baked agendas as progressive storytelling, but that's not what was happening here. KCD1 paints Cumans as monsters, savages, raiders from a far-off land who speak a foreign language, pillaging towns and murdering people without mercy. That's how you see them, because that's how your world sees them. And let's be honest, it's a video game. You never thought twice about it. They're the enemy. You kill the enemy. End of story. But in KCD2, they change that. You meet a camp of Cumans who are kind, remorseful, and eager to share a drink. They open up. They talk about how ashamed they are of what happened to your home. They weren't even a part of the attack, and they still want to make amends. And suddenly that old mental image starts to crack. You start seeing them not as monsters, but as people, mercenaries hired by a lord, providing for their families, caught in a war that wasn't their own. And then it hit me. The only reason why I saw them the way that I did in the first game was because that's what my limited perspective allowed. I was the son of a blacksmith from BFE Bohemia. I didn't live in Prague or Kuttenberg. I barely even knew my own neighbors, let alone anyone from another culture. It took weeks to travel, even months, if people even survived travel at all. Most people lived and died within a few miles of where they were born. Hell, Henry at the start of the game can't even read. But now in KCD2, I'm traveling more, I'm seeing more, meeting more people, and with every step, my worldview expanded. You start to understand people that you were once raised to hate, not because the game tells you to, but because it shows you their humanity. It leaves the judgment up to you. These days, there's a lot of games that want to teach you something, to deliver a message, to shift your perspective, to leave you with a takeaway, but too often they treat the player like an issue that needs to be corrected. And the moment that you start treating your audience like a problem, you lose everything that makes storytelling powerful. Trust. KCD2 doesn't tell you what to think. It shows you why someone might think differently. It doesn't polarize, it humanizes. Take the way the game handles anti-Semitism and prejudice. Early on, you meet a group of gypsies living in the woods. They're outcast, feared. Rumors are swirling about how they commune with the devil. The villagers want them gone. A simple misunderstanding, a romance between a local boy and a Roma girl, turns violent. The tension isn't exaggerated. It's not cartoonish. It's subtle and deeply human. Later in the game, you go to visit the Jewish quarter in Kuttenberg. These citizens were granted rights by King Wenceslas, yet they are still viewed with suspicion by a lot of people, including his own brother, the usurper, Sigismund. You see how they're mistreated. You see how they're targeted, and the game doesn't ever beat you over the head with it. There's no big speech, no forced redemption arc. It just lets you observe. It trusts you to pay attention and to come to your own conclusions. When you go to save them after Sigismund orders their homes raided, torched, and their people killed, you're helping them because they're allies against Sigismund, and you're allowed to keep whatever your opinion of them is. And that's what makes it work. That's what makes it resonate. It's not a lecture, it's a lived experience, and the game never forgets you're supposed to feel it, not just play it. I tried to do my best not to spoil too much of the game, but I had to bring up some really key points to make sure that I drove my message home and really communicated to you guys what my experience was like and how I contrast that with some of the games that I've seen over the last few years. And if you feel spoiled, don't worry, because I'll be honest with you, if you go and experience that stuff firsthand yourself, it's going to feel like the very first time regardless. And I highly recommend this game. Buy it, play it, support it, get your friends to play it. KCD 1 and 2, from my perspective, are just as significant as Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring in its own way. I think it's important to take the time to appreciate games and talk about that appreciation, because by doing that, you better understand what you're not liking about certain games. I've been talking about this in my Discord and I've talked about it in my live chat, but I'm trying to get people to get away from using like coined phrases, popular ones like woke, grifter, shit like that. And the reason why is because what ends up happening is that the more often we use phrases like that, the further away we get from actually describing what we don't like about what we're experiencing. And if you're not really describing it, then how are people ever going to fix anything? They're just going to write off what you're saying. People's brains turn off when they hear one of those keywords. And I just think it's completely unnecessary. It's something that we need to get away from. I'll be honest, Warhorse made 2 incredible games, but neither one of these games are really anything special. Like, they don't do anything unique, is the way that I should say it, because they're just iterating on things that have already existed, but they did it in a way that was grounded. They did it in a way that, well, it's what players are looking for. It's what players actually want. And because of that, well, the message that they're trying to send, the experience they're trying to give is actually communicated. They achieved what their goal was, and they found a lot of success in doing so. Both games sold incredibly well, and that's great to see. I don't think that every game needs to have the same meaningful experience as a Kingdom Come Deliverance or a Baldur's Gate 3, but I expect, especially the AAA side of this industry, to reach for it rather than my wallet or my vote. And that's what it's felt like over the last few years. And I'm getting sick and tired of it. And that's the reason why I talk about these kind of things. That's the reason why I bring up a lot of the topics that I do. I've seen a lot of comments recently that are like, why are you so negative? Do you even like video games? Why do you only criticize things? Why don't you review games? Things like that. One, reviews take me way longer than industry commentary, and it's not even close. But more than anything, I also don't like people saying those things. It's tone policing. I don't appreciate it. It's almost 9 out of 10 times it's a ban. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm just going to get rid of you if I see that kind of shit. But I think it's important to criticize things because it helps others to understand what I'm actually looking for in games. And criticizing things is how we get better stuff. I'm personally more interested in failure because I find failure fascinating. I talked about this in a recent stream, but you know, a lot of people are always fixated on what makes other people successful. They're always fixated on people's success. I don't care about your success. I care about how people fail because I feel like you can learn a lot more from failure than you can from success. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, keep in mind that all of my opinions, the things that I do, the things that I talk about, why I talk about the things the way that I do, it's from a great appreciation of games. I love the hobby. I love what this hobby can achieve. And this is one of those games that achieves something great. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, share it. Sharing works incredibly well, by the way. I didn't realize this, but one of the reasons why the channel has seen so much popularity over the last few months is specifically because people have been sharing videos. I didn't know that until I dove into the analytics. You guys have been throwing it up on like Reddit and on Twitter and Discords and stuff like that. I really appreciate that. That's really cool. Okay. Yeah. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, comment on the video. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you in the next one.
Family, 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 family.